I guess we can go ahead and get started. There's people drifting in, and so really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to be part of this symposium today and for attending this session. My name is Sierra Adair Tasiwapa-Ape, and full disclosure, I'm not on camera because I had eye surgery last week, and I have these glasses that I'm supposed to be wearing all the time that make me look like I'm a raccoon with a really bad hangover, and doing some very strange sort of chicken head bobbing moves in order to see decently, and have to take them off in order to set things up because that's a bit of an issue. So just full disclosure, that's why I'm not on camera today. Also, yes, as I found out this morning, Canvas Mastery Paths is not functioning. It's misbehaving today. So we're not going to be able to show you the student view of it, but I can definitely show you how to set it up as an instructor. So we're going to do a little bit of a pivot. And thank you for bearing with me on all of this. All right, so first I'd like to ask everybody to put into the chat what kind of experiences that you've had with AI. How are you using it in your classrooms? Not at all. Paul's using Grammarly. Interesting. The state of Nevada has banned Grammarly along with TikTok because Grammarly has it in their fine print that they can publish anything that's run through their program, and they don't have to give credit to the person who wrote it. So that's why it's banned here in our state. Yeah, students are not supposed to be using it, and they are. Yes, we have 4 different policies at Nevada State University where the faculty can choose anything from it's not allowed at all to it's used free range, don't have to cite it, don't have to do anything, just full blown. Most of them are either going right now with not using it, or not allowing it, or that if you do use it, that you have to use proper citation to go with it. All right, Tony says using it to generate interview questions. That's a good one. So we're kind of sort of all over the place. It's very much what it looks like our institution allows. Lori says they have to cite ChatGPT or Grammarly. Good. Patricia says it's personally likes to use it for constructing blurbs. Interesting. Well, before I forget, if you had any questions, I'd appreciate you just unmuting yourself and ask them as we go along. That way you won't forget what your question was and we can answer it in the moment. All right, so escape rooms and AI and mastery paths sound kind of like a strange combination, but they work. So I want to start with a little bit of talking about what the research tells us. Employers are definitely going to be looking for recent college graduates to be able to utilize AI in their work environment. So it's up to us to teach them how to use AI ethically and responsibly. That's pretty much my mantra ever since ChatGPT came out a little over a year ago, which is kind of surprising how it has just mushroomed into everything in very short order. So we definitely need to teach our students AI literacy. AI has some very positive things. about helping to challenge students, to examine their ideas, to examine their biases, and to think about how generative AI can actually help improve their writing. Also, instructors need to think in terms of scaffolding learning, to personalizing it, to reach a more diverse population of learners. I know we come from very different institutions. A lot of institutions in the Western region are very much into having a nice, diverse population that you might not see in some other institutions. At Nevada State University, we are all about diversity and inclusion. And it's a very high priority that our student population gets the skills that they need to be competitive out in the job market. So as instructors, we all want our students to do well. We want to prepare them to be out there in the job market and to give them the skills that they're going to need. And there are some ways that generative AI can help with this. There's also some big drawbacks. And these are the things that the students need to learn. We don't have a one-size-fits-all education anymore, and thankfully not. We do need to take into account what students' cultural backgrounds are, what their scholastic backgrounds are, and how we can help them utilize their lived experiences in order to succeed within the future. This is kind of where gamification kind of comes in. And I will tell you right now, I've been a big proponent of gamification for many years. I think that it is a great way of not only demonstrating a student's knowledge, current knowledge, prior knowledge, combining those together to where they can solve problems. It shows leadership skills. It also shows critical thinking skills. So games have the ability to basically nudge students out of their comfort zones, and especially when they're in escape room settings. Now, escape rooms can be set up where you can do them in a face-to-face class, synchronously online, or asynchronous, which is another component of why I love escape rooms. They also definitely can foster engagement, which is a key component with students, and motivate them. And also, they're kind of easy to assess with the students actually applying what they're learning. How are they coming about to solve these problems? One good way to really get students to buy in is to have a really good scenario. That narrative is really crucial to getting the students excited about the situation, even whether it's role-playing or escape rooms or other types of games. To get the students involved, a good storyline is going to really bridge that gap between, I really don't want to do this, and oh, this looks interesting. But by the same token, you have to be transparent with your students about how the game is tied to course learning outcomes, because they might just otherwise think, oh, well, this is a nice diversion, but it really hasn't got anything to do with anything. So being sure that you get that tie-in is really a key component. So let's look at generative AI, because that's pretty much the main thing that seems to be on most faculty's mind these days. And it is a definite benefit for students. particularly in brainstorming. I was in a session earlier where that was one of the big things that came out of a word cloud, was that students use it for brainstorming ideas, coming up with topics. It's excellent when it comes to helping non-native English speakers to write in English, to think in English. It's also great for personal learning as a coach. Khan Academy as their Khanmigo. That's an AI component that really does provide a lot of coaching for students, which AI can definitely help in that area. It also is a great way of increasing the capacity for doing research. It can do a lot of analysis and synthesizing of vast amounts of information. In fact, one of the reasons that ChatGPT and other generative AI is so good at doing language translations is because researchers have used AI to actually map patterns of different languages. And one thing that they have come up with that surprised them was the patterns are exactly alike. It doesn't matter what language it is. Those patterns are there exactly in the same manner, which I thought was just fascinating. Because we really think of, well, different languages are very different, but there's an underlying pattern that's exactly the same. And in fact, the researchers are now planning to use the AI to look at the clicks and sounds of sperm whales and see if AI can actually translate that based on these mappings of patterns into a language that we can understand so that we can actually communicate with them. That's just mind-blowing to me. But that also brings up some issues that are part of the drawbacks. We all know that ChatGPT, especially the 3.5 version, definitely hallucinates. So there's issues there with teaching students to not take what AI generates at face value, that it still has to be looked at to ensure that it's accurate. There's privacy concerns. Right now, you can upload papers into ChatGPT, and it will be able to generate text in your voice, your unique voice. But who else has access now to your unique voice and can generate things in your voice? Major ethical concerns to be thinking about. Also, there's this capacity for generating disinformation. It can't tell what is a honest, true fact from something that is misinformation. So it's going to just pull from other areas and really not say, oh, well, this is a good one and that's not a good one. It doesn't have the capacity to do that. We all know that generative AI can promote stereotyping and biases. I had a chat with it where I asked it, how could I talk to a 10-year-old boy about cyberbullying? And it gave me some nice ideas that were logical and practical. So then I changed my prompt to a 10-year-old girl. And what ChatGPT gave me was a whole bunch of emotional kind of platitudes rather than something that you could tangibly work with. There's also the lack of transparency that's concerning authorship. It pulls from all of these sources, but we have no idea what it's pulling from and what it generates. So who owns the copyright to this? Whose intellectual property rights are being infringed upon by what generative AI is pulling from all kinds of places? these are going to be some deeper conversations that are going to be very interesting in the future. Because some of the research I've been looking at talks about, well, what separates us as humans from something like generative AI that can think on some levels. So that's some very Star Trek type discussions that are going to go on for anybody who's a Star Trek fan, with Data and all of the, whether he was human or not, whether he existed as an entity with rights. These are the kinds of conversations we're going to end up having. So what I've been doing in the last couple of years has been working with our Common Read book that is A Tale of Two Planets, Stories of Climate Change and Inequity in a Divided World. What I've been doing is creating escape rooms and other kinds of exercises and things of how to use the Common Read in as many kind of classes as possible. You would think that, okay, that's perfect for environmental studies, meteorology, those kinds of things. But it's got short stories, it's got poetry, it's got personal narratives, it's got scientific research. So there's a little bit for everybody in there. And that's why what I'm focusing on today is one of the things that I set up for our Common Read. Now let's talk about Mastery Fast for a few minutes. This is what a faculty sees when they're putting together the Mastery Paths. It looks a little bit overwhelming, but that's because this is the faculty's view of it. On the right here, up at the top, this is what all that the students are going to see when they get into this particular module. We see all of this and more. All they're going to see until they take this first assessment, they're going to see that everything else is locked in the module. So there's not going to be this laundry list of things. Then when they take that assessment, depending on how well they did on it, they will either be put into a pathway where they're going to get a clue about it and then take a retake exam, or they will be forwarded into the pathway to where they're going to go to the next item that's going to be assessed as the question. So that's the beauty of Mastery Paths. It really allows you to set up these 3 different pathways. Right now, that's all that you can do with Mastery Paths. But each of those pathways can then keep branching and branching and branching. So think of it sort of as creating a branching case study, to where depending on what answer the student gives, it's going to put them into a particular pathway. And then whatever answer they give within that pathway is going to put them into one of 3 more. And it just branches out from there. So I'm looking through the chat. Any questions so far? Okay. So what you see in the grade book is going to be whatever pathway the students have chosen or have been put on based on their answers. And the other areas are completely grayed out so that they can't be putting grades into a pathway that the student is not on. So yes, there's going to be more in your grade book than you would normally see, but you don't have to worry about giving a student a grade in a pathway that they're not on. And the points in those different pathways are not going to be held against the students because they're going to be only on one pathway. All right. So here's where we're going to start to pivot a little bit. We're going to play a game, and I was going to have it set up to where we would see it from the student side in Mastery Paths, but with Mastery Paths not working this morning, so we're pivoting. So here's the scenario. You're a private investigator. It's your first week on the job. You're working for this prominent law firm, and your boss dumps this pro bono check on case on your desk and casually mentions that you're taking over from the previous investigator who left the firm suddenly. As a way of bringing you up to speed on the case, your boss tasks you to ascertain why the gentle and unassuming manatees that live off the coast of Florida are dying in horrifying numbers. Discover who or what is the culprit and recommend how to bring those responsible to justice. The client, Concerned Citizens for the Manatee Continuation, is a nonprofit grassroots group of animal lovers that are desperate to save the manatees from extinction. Having exhausted all other legal and political channels, the clients have turned to this law firm for help. Your boss hands you this lovely thin file. Amid the bits and pieces of the preliminary information on the client, you notice a fact sheet and what could pass for some crime scene photos and reports. From the office gossip, you know that your predecessor abruptly left under a cloud of having done some shoddy detective work. Therefore, you must meticulously analyze the data sheet, the reports, and the photos. Look for oversights, inaccuracies, miscalculations, misinformation. You're going to want to compare the data sheet to the reports to unearth the omissions and the flaws. Verify all the clues. Read transcripts of interviews with experts and witnesses. Then write your own report in which you present the issues, you lay out the evidence of who or what is to blame, and make actionable recommendations to solve this problem before it's too late for the manatees. So your immediate challenge is there's a preliminary hearing that's set for the day after tomorrow, and the attorneys must have an accurate fact sheet to present to the judge. Therefore, you must verify each organization's web address, and compare each of the facts listed on GAI's Manatee fact sheet with the facts stated on the organization's websites. Then you need to further investigate and find supporting documentation. Now, when I got this picture from Stable Diffusion, I asked it to give me a robot who was holding a magnifying glass and wearing a Sherlock Holmes hat. And this is what I got: 2 magnifying glasses and a top hat. So, perfect example of how generative AI has a different way of looking at the world. So what we're going to do is, this is my Mastery Paths in my Canvas course. And this was the initial scenario. This is the fact sheet that was produced by generative AI. And what we're going to start with is, get to it. I'm going to put in the chat. These are the 4 organizations that generative AI came up with for the organizations and all of these 10 facts. What I would like you to do as being the investigators on this project, which of these 4 are actual legitimate organizations. All of them, none of them, some of them. So take a minute and verify that these organizations exist or not. And then put your results in the chat. So what do you think? Does Save the Manatee Club exist? Florida Fish and Wildlife? Interesting. We got no for the Save the Manatee Club. Tiffany thinks that they're all legit. All right. Well, we all know about the Smithsonian. And of course, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, those are definitely existing. But Save the Manatee Club actually exists. So all four of these are actual legitimate organizations. So the first quiz that the students would get would be to ascertain which of all of these are legit or not. And if they didn't come up with all of them being legitimate, it would take those students who did not get it into the clue that's basically directing them to do a Google search to look at which of these organizations actually are legitimate. And then it would take them to the retake for the first component of verifying the legitimacy of the organizations. And from there, it takes the students to the next thing to look at on the fact sheets. How about these websites? Do they actually exist? I'm going to put the different websites that this is what Chat GPT came up with for actual citations with websites for these different organizations. So take a second and okay, we've got, yes, the Smithsonian one that is listed for the Chat GPT as being the website does not exist. That's correct. What about the others? Yes, to say the manatee does exist. So ChatGPT got that one correct. It obviously didn't get the Smithsonian one correct. What about the other two? Yes, Fish and Wildlife is not an actual website. That's the way they've got it. So for the students who didn't find all of these addresses or didn't look, the clue would be basically to check out all of the URLs and determine which ones actually exist. And the only one that really does exist is the Save the Manatee Club. That one is correct. The others are not. So it would take the students to the retake for this information. And you'll notice the retake is worth half the points of the initial. So in an effort of saving time, I'm going to pick my favorite fact out of the fact sheet that was generated by AI. The Florida manatees are protected by both federal and state laws. They are listed as an endangered species under the U.S. Endangered Species Act and are also protected by the Florida Manatee Sanctuary Act. And the citation for this is the page is supposed to be West Indian manatee for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service with no date. And as we already know, a bogus website. So you're tasked with going to find the real information about the manatee based on what the fact is, this one fact that has generated by AI. So take a guess. There's three different components. One, that Florida manatee are protected by both federal and state law. Two, that they're on the Endangered Species Act. They're listed as endangered on the Endangered Species Act. And three, they're protected by Florida Manatee Sanctuary Act. So put which ones you think are completely accurate, which ones you think are partially accurate, and which you think are completely inaccurate. So you can just put if you think they're all accurate, then just say all accurate in the chat. If you think the first one's accurate, put that in there, or that it's partially accurate or it's completely inaccurate. And remember, this is based on what the website is supposed to be saying about them. Okay, and then we have in here that that they are protected by federal laws and the Endangered Species Act. And they are protected by the sanctuary. Yep. And that's from the Save the Manatee Club. Yes. There is an existing U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service website that's on the manatee. It's not listed as this one, although the refuge at Crystal River, it does exist. But if you go to the Fish and Wildlife Services website and go on their manatee page, you will find that it does not talk about state laws at all, only federal ones. It does say that they are protected by the Endangered Species Act, but it does not say that they are listed as endangered species on the Endangered Species Act, because there is the component of either being a threatened species or an endangered one. And both of them are listed on there, but they're two different categories and two different ways of being protected under the law, whether they're endangered versus threatened. And it doesn't say anything at all about the Florida Manatee Sanctuary Act. So, once again, if you did not get which ones were partially correct and which ones are completely inaccurate, you would be taken to the clue list again and to the retake. And hopefully, in the retake, you would be able to come up with all of the correct answers. But if not, it would take you to more information or to a Zoom site to work with the instructor to get more information. But at this point, we're going to say that congratulations, you figured out that which facts were accurate and which ones were not, which ones were partially correct, which leads to the next component of where you would be doing a report based on the three sites that actually do have the information about the manatee, because the Smithsonian one doesn't mention manatees at all. So even though they exist as an organization, there's nothing on their website about manatees. So it would be you as the student's task to then figure out the nuances of what are the correct facts and incorrect facts and produce a new fact sheet that is actually factual and does refer to the particular different websites. point being on this at this point is to get the students to actually examine what generative AI has reported out as being facts and to dig deeper to find out if those facts are true or not. Because particularly with this fact number 9, with the manatee, you have to dig in several layers to find out that the manatee were put onto as moved to being the category of threatened rather than endangered in 2017. And that there was a bill introduced into Congress last year to get them upgraded again to being endangered because they are dying in record numbers right now due to pollution creating algae that is blocking the sunlight so that the seagrasses that they generally feed on have died off. And so the manatee are starving. But you wouldn't know this until you dug in deeper to find this information. And that's the point of using this type of an escape room with the students to get them to start looking at these deeper layers, to do the analytics, to look at it, think about it, and go do the research so that they can understand that, yes, it can be helpful. It can point you in these directions because it could definitely point you into these organizations, but it isn't going to generate the quality information that you really need. So this would then take the students into a nice debrief where they could talk about the facts that they found and where generative AI didn't do a good job, where it did a good job, how it helped them, and how it made them realize that there's a lot more that needs to be done than just pulling something off of ChatGPT and turning it in. So any questions at this point? All right. So this is my actual one that goes through the whole facts. And you'll see it is quite long and involved when you're putting it all in with your facts and then with your retakes and your clues. Let's see, we have a question here. How does the grading calculation work? If some students achieve one branch and the others are second branch, which is worth 0.5 of the original. Curious about what the grade book looks like. All right. Well, unfortunately, with with it not working as well, or not at all, I was hoping to be able to show you what it would look like with different students doing it on different pathways, but this is one that I was working on before. And so it shows you that the students can't access the points. You can't accidentally put points in for a student who's not on that pathway. So this, if the student misses this 1 point here, then they would be taking the retake, so they would get the 0.5. But if the student actually did get the 1 point here, it would be skipping this one and going to the next one in the series, in the pathway. So you'll notice that you cannot put a grade in here, and it's not, Canvas isn't going to hold that 0.5 against that student. Yes, we are recording the symposium, and Benny can tell you where these can all be found after the end of this session.
So I think the question is more like once the mastery path is working, could you make an additional little recording how it actually looks like from the student perspective? I think that's the actual question. Yes, this session is being recorded, and we will share it once it's available.
Yes. And I would love to hear from you. And if you can, I can make a recording when we get MasteryPaths working again. Yeah, technology is great when it works, right? Back to here. So this kind of gives you a better idea of what things are showing in different capacities. This is another climate change escape room that I set up, where you choose whether you're going to do backpacking, horsepacking, or goat packing. And yes, goat packing is a real thing. I've actually done it. To study bighorn sheep in the high country in Wyoming in summer, where you're trying to be as non-invasive in this fragile environment as possible. So depending on your choices that you make, it would have an impact on the environment. And so the point was to choose the least impact way of getting to the high country, being in the high country, and counting those bighorn sheep during the summer. That was the scenario. And you can see all of the things are definitely tied to your type of mode of travel and how you're going to set up your re-ration pan and how that all works with whether you're doing backpacking, horsepacking, or goat packing. Then another way that you can use MasteryPaths for personalized learning is that you have the assessment, and if the students that didn't do very well on that assessment, it would put them on a pathway to where they would be getting things like flashcards and practice quizzes and working in small groups with other people on this one pathway. The students do not see at any point any of the other pathways. They only see the pathway that they're on, and they would only be put into groups for that particular pathway. They would all end up having the final assessment, but how they got to that final assessment would be very different based on their prior knowledge or what they were working on currently. It would put them into different pathways to where they could get specialized to that pathway's type of information. And then another one, and this is one that I used to do before MasteryPaths came out, and it was a pain in the neck because I literally had to teach how to do things for a radio spot or a TV spot or a print ad if when the project was going to be to do a PSA, and the students could decide radio spot, TV ad, or print ad. So I had to teach all of the things and have a very generic rubric that really didn't help a whole lot with the students. And then when MasteryPaths came out, I could give them all specialized information just for their pathway. So the students that wanted to do a print ad, they would get information on colors and fonts and the layouts and how to emphasize things within the layout. The ones working on the TV spot would get information about lighting and camera and sound and how to project on the TV. The ones that were doing the radio spot would learn how to write the scripts for the radio spots, and it would all be very specialized information. So that was great because then I didn't have to teach this sort of generic everything. The students got the information that was focused on the type of PSA that they were going to do for their project. How long did it take you to set this up? It can be a bit time consuming. With this one, since I had all of the materials, it was pretty easy just to translate it right onto the different pathways. This one took quite a while to set up because I was doing it all from scratch. So to create the components and to have the questions that were unique to the type of travel took a bit of time to set up. But the beauty of this is once you get it set up, then it's not like you're going to have to change it every single semester. So It's a little bit time on the front end, but on the back end, and once you got it all set up, it goes very fast and smooth, and you don't have to worry about, oh my gosh, I have to recreate this every semester. This particular one, where you put students on different pathways, I had generated, as part of our Respondus package, we have StudyMate. So it generates flashcards. It also generates Jeopardy-like games. So I had a lot of that material. So it didn't take that long to set it up. So it's really a question of whether it's something that you're doing new or if it's something that you're taking existing materials and just plugging it in. Was there another question in there? I answered everybody's questions. So let me go back to the different pathways. It can, like I said, it looks pretty daunting for you, but it's not going to look that way for your students. So let me come down here. So this is the PSA one. So it doesn't look that daunting. However, the one that's the different assessments, that looks a little bit more. I had set up, based on the Common Read, another one that was based on a story that was in there called Sick World. And so that one is a little bit more involved. But it really depends on how much you have to do from scratch. This particular one here that I did, it sends them to Trivia Maker to go through information. They have to enter door key codes. So this one is more like a real traditional escape room with having the ticking clock and having to do things and find things in short order in order to escape the room. However, those are a lot of fun to set up. And this one is actually unique because it's at the beginning of an introductory class into environmental studies. And the whole purpose of this was to expose students to different types of projects that they would end up being able to choose for their final project in the class. So it was exposing them to some of the leaders in climate change, as well as some scientific work, possible projects on looking at desalination, rising water levels with melting polar ice caps, working with climate change for producing things like more solar panels, working with, particularly in our area, Lake Mead is a real concern because we're 50 feet from dead pool on it. And when we hit dead pool, what is that going to do for generation of electricity to a lot of you folks in California? So there's all kinds of conservation efforts going on. And so this is introducing students to different things through what they have to find in this office. So that one took a little bit more to set up. So questions about mastery paths that unfortunately I can't show you the full extent, or just questions in general. And here is my ridiculously long email address. But as I said, I would love to hear from you, and I will do a recording of this when we do get Mastery Paths working again, so that you can see things from the student perspective. Just email me and I will send you the link to the recording. Are there training courses for this? I don't know of Canvas having any training sessions for it. What I've done for my faculty is I create step-by-step guides with screenshots that take them through how to do things. And I put on workshops all the time on how to use the tools and not only demonstrate them in there, but then having the faculty work with it and create things as we're going along. Because I'm a firm believer in hands-on making much more sense than just having somebody show you how to do something. So it's makes a lot of sense to do that, and I'm happy to work with you in any way that I can. Oh, thank you, Benny, for putting my long email address in there.
I hope I spell it right. I'm double checking it.
It looks like so. Yep, it looks like you got it all spelled out. Perfect. And I do apologize that it's not working as well as it should, because MasteryPass is an excellent way of being able to personalize the learning for your students so that they get that timely manner feedback, get that specialized tutoring that they may need. It is wonderful for that. And particularly when there's so much going on with their classes and things, that to give them that little extra boost that they may need is a wonderful thing to do. And by setting it up through MasteryPass, you can ensure that they get the kind of information that they need when they need it, and they have that support. And then there's always, as one of the possibilities through there, to contact you directly if they're really stuck on something. But MasteryPass is definitely an excellent tool that I think is very underutilized within the greater Canvas community. And for me, with doing escape rooms, it's heavenly to have it when it's working, of course. So now that you've kind of gone through and we've looked at how we can help the students to utilize AI and see what it can help with and what it really can't help with, do you think that that's going to help your students if you implement something along the lines of having them do that kind of analysis, whether you set it up as a game or you just have it as an assignment? What do you think? Please put your responses in the chat. Yes, Lori thinks that it's analysis important. Yep. That's what I love about it, is the students don't know what the other students are getting in the way of specialized information because they never see those other pathways. So they're not going to have any idea about, oh, well, I'm getting all this extra help and this other person isn't getting it because they don't need it. That's a real plus, especially when you're having them do group work based on their pathway. So it's not like, oh, well, these people are separate because they're not able to interact because they're not at this particular level or they're beyond that particular level. Paul, the gaming approach is what's getting you interested. Fantastic. I love gamification. I think students are comfortable with games, but they may not necessarily see that they're educational value, which is why I always tie all of my any type of game or gamification that I have in courses, I tie it all into what the course learning outcomes are and how the game can help support those learning outcomes or lead to those learning outcomes. What prep can we do to turn our assignments into gamification or escape rooms? Mastery Passes is one way to do it, but you don't necessarily have to use Mastery Pass for setting up escape rooms. Depending on the type of escape room that you want to do, you can go back to this one where I had this set up to where the students get their first clues by going through a Trivia Maker Kahoot-like game that they play asynchronously. I've had students working on this in groups in the classroom, as well as doing it synchronously online and asynchronous. So you think about the tools that you have available and how you can utilize those to set up the escape room situation. One of the main things that is absolutely crucial, particularly with escape rooms or role-playing type games, is that narrative, that scenario. They have to be engaged with that scenario. It has to be interesting to them. And so spend time thinking about what your scenario is going to be. We're all about water conservation here in Southern Nevada. And so I set this one up particularly with everybody's going to be on this team with this renowned scientist who is doing a survey for a project about water conservation. And her helicopter goes down. She's alive, but she's in a coma. So it's up to you to get into her office and to finalize the information. I utilized Canvas for using the voice. I had the transcript along with it. And then I send them to the Trivia Maker asynchronous site that's going to expose them to information. And they have to figure out what the cryptic code is to get into the door from the clues that are in that Trivia Maker game. And then they input them into this, into the quiz, where they type in their code, which is a number code. And it's a 4-digit code from the clues that they got in the Trivia Maker game. And once they get access to the room, then they have to look for clues based on things that are scattered around the office. And get down to it. Nope, too far. And there's sets where if you got one clue and that still didn't work, you've got a second clue and additional ones and get into the office. Then you find the clues around the office. And if you didn't get them correct, to come up with the code that would keep the computer from letting the law enforcement know that you had broken into her office. You couldn't figure that out, you would end up in jail. Or if you succeeded in getting the code into the computer in time, then all of her research would open up to you. So I had a lot of fun doing that one. Full disclosure, I am the co-author of a book on gamification in higher education that came out from Rutledge in October. And a lot of the how-to of what I did with the games, how I utilized Mastery Pass, is all in the book. And that is a link to the book. The title is Gamification in Higher Education, a How-To Instructional Guide. I'm all about how to do things. And just like I do with my faculty, of giving them step-by-step guides. Basically, the book is a step-by-step guide of how to do different types of games, short games, full course gamification. And it's all about using Canvas because Canvas is our platform. So check it out. Any questions? Well, I appreciate you attending today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.